It's a pleasure for me to be here with you guys today. I love Beekeeper meetings, and it's always good to see everybody. I'm going to give you just a brief report on some of the things that have happened in the past year. A couple of the things that are on here, other beekeepers or other people will talk about at a little bit more depth than me. But first of all, I just want to thank you for your help and for your support. I'm one guy doing the job that really ought to be three guys, or at least three guys did in the past. And a lot of the good things that have happened in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years would not have happened without beekeepers volunteering their time, beekeepers who are good at doing something else that they do for a living, who got involved with this association and started making some very helpful things happen. So I just want to thank you for that. I want to tell you that working together, disease detection, the levels of American foul brood have gone way down, even more so than they've been in the past. And one of the things I reported to you guys last year is I'm very encouraged because some of you beekeepers are starting to recognize these symptoms and calling up and saying, hey Tim, I think I have a problem and this is why I think I have a problem, and then we work together to resolve it. Many years ago, there wasn't that sort of cooperation between beekeeper and bee inspector, and that made it very, very difficult at times to eradicate or clean up disease in areas. So I want to just thank you for that. I want to tell you that the winter death loss survey is something that has taught us a lot, and it wouldn't have been possible without certain people within this association getting involved to do the work, to make it happen, and it wouldn't happen, we wouldn't learn these things without your participation. So I'm going to encourage you to do that again this year. The Honeybee Calendar Project, the Beekeeping Management Calendar Project, this is the second year we've had it. Over 600, or about 600 copies printed again this year. If you didn't get one, Bill Isley, the skinny Santa Claus in the back, has them for sale. And Bill, actually, if we could put your head on my body, we'd have Santa in the room. But Bill has them back there. They make great gifts for people. As a matter of fact, Landy's going to give a report on the State Honey Show shortly, I think, maybe later on today. Maybe not. Am I right or wrong, Janet? No?
We'll try to fit her in somewhere.
Well, never mind. Let me give you a quick.
Just before the auction.
Let me give you a quick sound bite. Yesterday, when we were tearing the honey show down, this very good-looking, well-dressed woman comes up to us and says, "Oh, you guys sent me a calendar, and I just want to tell you, I read it all the time. And actually, my son reads every month and then regurgitates back all the details to me when we're driving somewhere in the car." And then she says, "By the way, I'm Lieutenant Governor Kim such and such and such and such." I can't pronounce her last name, but in any case, she was very, very nice. She was very happy to see the honey show in the State House, and she has a copy of this calendar and reads it, so non-beekeepers are even being educated by it. So I would just encourage you to keep circulating that and tell you that it wouldn't be possible without people that participated in this organization to make it happen. The USDA Honeybee Survey, I'm going to give you some details on that today. And I'm sorry to inform you, but we did not get funded for it this year. So we had 3 years of participating in that program, but this coming season we will not be funded for it. The State Honey Show, I'm happy to say that we're back at the State House, and Landy and I and Bill and a couple of other people have a lot of really good ideas for ways we can even make it better next year and be an educational outreach. The people that want to taste honey, the people that want to buy local honey, the people that know about the plight of the honeybees, all walking back and forth right past our display cases to go to get their lunch every day at the cafe. So it really, I think we got a lot of bang for our buck there. We now have a new branch of the New Jersey Beekeepers, I think it's a 10th branch, correct? The 10th branch in this association. Wasn't that long ago we were less than 450 members. Now we're up over 1,200 members, I believe, and that's just a great thing. That's really good. Kevin's going to report on the swarm survey, which wouldn't have been possible without participation from beekeepers. And actually this past year, because of the issue with Mr. Swan, I actually updated the bee spill plan so that the people that were responding all moved to nursing homes by now that were on the old list, as Chris so adequately mentioned to me. And now there's a group of younger people that will help to respond in a situation like that. And if you are interested in being involved in that, please send me an email and I will add you to my list of people that are willing to help in a situation like that. Okay, some of the projects that I was looking to do this past year, and I just mentioned the bee spill plan. It's up on the New Jersey Beekeepers, or the New Jersey Department of Agriculture website. The online registration, I'm sad to say, is like a millstone hanging around my neck. And it is not active and live yet, and I regret to inform that, but sometimes the wheels of progress move very slow. We have developed at the Department of Agriculture skills for diagnosing nosema and AFB and varroa, and our lab can analyze your samples if you care to send them there. And we did not continue this Fumagellin or Nosema cerani survey this year just because of time constraints and weather, and things didn't work out. I will tell you that we got funded this past year for the honeybee survey, but it's not going to continue for the following year. Okay, AFB, our incidence was 0% this past year. We had no reported cases of American foul brood, okay, which is really good. The year before it was about 0.95%, still extremely low. But I'm going to remind you guys of things I've said before. There were years in New Jersey when certain counties would run 45, 50% of the colonies inspected in those counties infected with American foul brood. So vigilance and understanding what the disease is and keeping on top of these things are very important. Okay? If you're interested in how to deal with American foul brood, you can certainly talk to me, but Kevin England from the Northwest chapter put a video of us shaking bees on clean foundation in order to save a colony the right time of year with the honey flow still on that had a lot of population but just had a few cells with AFB. The other thing Mr. Swan mentioned, I think, was about gamma radiation, and there's a gentleman from Pennsylvania named Mark Antunes, and he sets up there's a gamma radiation facility down in Salem, New Jersey, and he sets up a day when people can bring their gear, their equipment down there they want to radiate, run it through the irradiation chamber, and then pick it up again about a week later when it's done. But you really need to have a pallet load of it, or you need to have several beekeepers get together to have a total pallet load, and it has to be packed a certain way. And if you had equipment that you wanted to do that, you should give Mark a call and ask him more about the details on it.
Have you done it?
I was there last year when they did it. I have not done it because someone mentioned old school beekeepers. Well, you're looking at one. And it costs, if you don't have a significant amount, it costs a lot per piece. Yes?
Tools, did you throw your tools in there too, in addition to the frames and all this stuff?
No,
okay.
I don't.
Okay.
I put my tool in my smoker and then I clean it up and, you know, I have no issues. EFB was up, oops. Now I'm confused. EFB in 2013 was up 1.8% from 1.6 the year before. And you know, EFB is a stress-related disease. I've told you guys before, typically we would see it in the blueberry growing regions of New Jersey years ago, but in the last 5, 6, 7 years, Bob Hughes and I have seen it all over the state. And you know, high varroa levels put stress on colonies just like poor feed does. And I wonder if it isn't the varroa virus complex that looks like EFB, but we see more and more of that all throughout the state. Oops, now I'm going the wrong way. Okay, varroa mites. The Bee Informed Partnership says over 90% of the samples they analyze have at least one varroa. And the average varroa load on colonies that they sample are increasing over the last few years And I believe it's probably even higher now. That's a 2011. It's probably more than that now. So, you know, if you've heard me speak before, I'm very, very proactive at controlling varroa mites. I think varroa mites are a huge problem. And it's probably one of the, one thing that most beekeepers could do to reduce their death loss and keep their colonies stronger and healthier is actively keeping these mites in check. The bear issues in New Jersey continue to be more and more of a problem. Last year I reported about sightings in Atco, Waterford, and Vineland, but this year Ann and Angelo were hit pretty hard in Monmouth County. And this bear, and actually Anthony was hit up in his place, Chester, right? Mendham. Okay, and Chris was hit in Mendham as well. So there's a lot of people outside of the hunting zone that are being hit by these bears at this point. Fencing is something you really need to consider. I'm starting to consider it where I live. But you know what? I'm an old school beekeeper, and I tend to be, I mean, that costs a lot of money to set all that stuff up. But I think I need to do it because potentially I can lose a tremendous amount. If they got into one of my wintering yards and destroyed everything, it would be a real financial burden on me. So I'm really considering starting to put poles in place and get ready to fence my yards this year, or this year and next year. Okay, municipal issues. I still get a fair amount of neighbor beekeeper complaints for people keeping bees in urban areas. As you guys know, some municipalities pass ordinances, but some seek guidance from outside sources, but others, like South Plainfield, pass an ordinance that says it's so restrictive that it says if your queen bee is not marked, you're in violation of their ordinance. And I wonder, well, I wonder who in South Plainfield is going around to check to see if your queen bee is marked or not. But that lack of consistency can be a real problem. Last year, we developed a model beekeeping ordinance. The New Jersey, the NJBA E-Board, the executive board, approved that model beekeeping ordinance. And it's a tool that you have if your community is thinking of passing an ordinance. We have a model, but we're not really strong. We're not encouraging you to go and say, hey, I want you to pass an ordinance, because there's only about 10, 12 municipalities in the whole state out of 560 some that actually have an ordinance, okay? Most of them don't really want to get involved with it, but in some instances, or it's a tool there in case somebody wants to pass one, or a municipality wants to pass one, so at least they give them some guidance and some things that make sense. And once again, that is an example, or that was an example of beekeepers working together from the executive board, from different chapters, to develop this model that is really reasonable and fair to all parties. We have some legislation in the legislature right now, and Dave, I think, is going to discuss that as soon as I'm done, so let me keep rolling. If you keep your bees on a small lot, this is just to remind you of these facts, okay? Maybe you've never been to one of these meetings before, maybe you're a new beekeeper and don't know. But you need to have a water source that's in the sun and easy for bees to get water from February to November, okay? You do not want your bees drinking from the top of your neighbor's pool, because if they start drinking there in March, over top of the cover, when the cover is removed, they're going to keep drinking there right through the summer. Okay, so you want to make sure you have that. You don't want to be a bee hoarder. We saw a case where a guy had 35 hives in an alley in New York City. I mean, that's ridiculous. He doesn't even have a backyard. 35 hives in an alley. Okay, you don't want to be doing that in a small urban setting. You want to get multiple bee yards if you want to hoard them in many locations. Most commercial beekeepers are probably bee hoarders at heart. Swarm control. That's your responsibility, okay? You may think a swarm's a wonderful thing, but your neighbor's kids run in fear, and your neighbor gets ticked off because his kids are afraid to go out and play in their backyard because your swarm lands on their bush right by their back door every time it swarms. You go over and collect it and say, hee hee hee, it's not a big deal, they're very gentle. He don't believe that, okay? Don't manage your bees to encourage swarming, manage them to control swarming. Split them when they're getting ready. Don't use a queen excluder. Give them plenty of room early in the season. One of the reasons we started this this calendar was a lady called me up who says, she said, oh, Mr. Schuler, my bees died. You know, it's been 3 or 4 years. I have 2 hives in my backyard. She says, I never made a honey crop. I said, well, when do you put your honey supers on? She says, I put them on usually around June. And I'm like, well, if you put them on in June, you totally missed the honey flow. And she says, but I never remember, with all the rest of the things going on in my life, what I'm supposed to do when. That's why we developed this, for people like that, okay? You don't want to encourage robbing. You don't want to do open feeding. If you're keeping bees on a small lot in New Jersey, you don't want to do those things, okay? Your neighbor perception, when you're standing there, and I don't know how many people I've seen do this, they look like they're investigating a nuclear bomb site, and they tell their neighbor, oh, the bees won't hurt you. The bees won't hurt you. You know, come on. The perception is that you're scared to death of your own bees, and you're telling them and not going to hurt them or their kids. All right? And finally, be a good neighbor. If you hate your neighbor already, or they hate you, and you start keeping bees, they'll hate you even more. It's far better to be a good neighbor up front. And I know some of you have unreasonable neighbors, and, you know, I don't know what to say about that. Whatever you do, if your neighbor's unreasonable, don't line up 15 hives on the property line facing their backyard, okay? Because that means you're unreasonable too. All right, let me talk briefly about the National Honeybee Survey. We've been involved in this in New Jersey for the last 3 years. And I was told to select 24 apiaries across the state. In order to be in this selection, you had to have 10 colonies, and they want you to pick high-risk beekeepers first. High-risk beekeepers would be people that migrate, commercial beekeepers that do pollination, new queen producers, and pollinators. And that's typically what I did every year. And then I would go and collect multiple samples, and they would be analyzed for a bunch of different things. And just let me give you, I don't have the results from 2013, but I've looked more closely at the results from 2011 and 12, and I'm just going to give you some indications of what they were. Okay? For the second consecutive year, none of the following pathogens were found in New Jersey. Okay? This is a new exotic mite. It's not in the United States, but we're monitoring for it. This is Apis cerana, which is the Asian honeybee, not in the United States. Tracheal mite, was not found in New Jersey in any of the people that participated in this program. Nosema apis was not found in New Jersey. Apis mellifera capensis, the Cape honeybee, was not found in New Jersey. And slow bee paralysis virus was not found in New Jersey. None of those things were found here, okay? So, some of the pathogens that were found, okay? Acute Israeli paralysis virus. Okay, we had last year 4% of the apiaries surveyed had it, and that was down from 8 the previous year. This chronic bee paralysis, about 4% of the apiaries had it, same as 2011. Last year I told you guys that I've seen more cases of it than I had previously, up to about 6, 7 cases. And it's becoming more and more, it's just more noticeable to me, I guess, maybe. But of the people that participated in this survey, stayed the same. Deformed wing virus was found in 100% of the tested apiaries. And the previous year, 2011, it was only in 88%. Now, deformed wing virus is associated highly with varroa and varroa levels. Okay? Acute bee paralysis virus was found in 4% of the apiaries. We didn't have it in 2011. Black queen cell virus, 79%, which was up from 76% the previous year. Nosema ceranae was found in 58% of the apiaries, and that was down actually from 76% of the apiaries in 11. Okay? And then 75% of the surveyed apiaries had varroa levels over the recommended treatment level of 2 mites per 100 bees. And that's increased from 44% the previous year. So the level of varroa that we are living with or accepting in our colonies, it seems to be creeping up. Okay? That's the take-home message from that. Now, the other interesting thing was in 2012, I collected, as part of this survey, from 10 of the apiaries out of the 24, I collected fresh pollen from the brood nest fresh pollen that was stored in the comb, was not made into bee bread yet. It had to be fresh. Okay? About 20 pesticides were found. The lowest sample had 2, the highest had 11. Stationary apiaries with no commercial ag also had it, okay? Or they were stationary apiaries not around commercial ag, all the way up to people that were pollinators of vine crops. And we were given the part per billion levels, but they didn't tell us how high was bad for bees. And the take-home message is bees are bringing home contaminated pollen. And the next slide is going to show you what the most common things that were found were. Fluvalinate was the most commonly found. It was in 80% of the samples. Okay? It's used agriculturally, but fluvalinate was used to control varroa mites in honeybee colonies from the mid-80s up until probably the mid-90s, until the mite developed a resistance to it. Even the newest beekeepers that were in this program had that agent or that chemical in their colonies. That was in 80% of the samples. This other one, azoxystrobin was found in 60% of the apiaries, and it's a fungicide used on many different crops. Bifenthrin was found in 40% of the apiaries. It's an insecticide used against many different pests in orchards, nurseries, homes, and on corn. Okay? And it has a very long residual time in the soil, and sublethal doses are known to affect the growth rate of honeybees. That was in 40% of the apiaries. I can't pronounce that word, but you can read it. It was also found in 40% of the apiaries. And then this last one, chlorophyros, was found in 30% of the apiaries, and it's an insecticide used on corn, fruit, vegetables, as well as lawn and ornamental plants. So, you know, there's things that are coming into beehives in pollen as honeybees go out and forage for it. And these were the ones that were found in most of the samples, and you saw the percentages. There were some other pesticides found to a lesser extent. And but one of the things they give you, they would give me the part per billion level, but it's really difficult to find out what levels are harmful to honeybees. Okay. I already talked about that. Okay, 2013, some other cool things happened in New Jersey, and some of this happened down in the Jersey Cape. We put an observation hive in the Cape May Zoo. Actually, it was the observation hive that used to be in the Agricultural Museum that closed, okay? Bill Isley and his crew down in the Jersey Cape have a connection with the Cape May County Zoo. They have a couple of staff members that took their beginner beekeeping class, and they made a huge display down there, had a big opening, and we put that observation hive in, and it's still alive as of a couple weeks ago. I'm hoping it's going to make it. But if you ever get down to Cape May for your summer vacation on a rainy day, go check out the zoo and see the observation hive down there. There's also an observation hive that we placed in the Cape May Nature Center. Thanks. And that's down there. Well, actually, the zoo gets about 500,000 people a year. I wanted to tell you that. And they use some of the trifold display panels, as well as this nature center trifold. They use the trifold display panels as well. I tried to get a webcam up and running at the Beneficial Insect Lab, but that hasn't panned out. Once again, sometimes the wheels of progress turn very slowly. But this past year, Bob Hughes and I worked on a curriculum for the Beyond the Basics class, which is a beekeeping class for people that have been keeping bees for about a year and who took a beginner class. And we really had a great turnout this year. We limited it to 20-some students. I think it was sold out in half a week. But we had a great class of people, and we have a nice little apiary there on Rutgers campus. And it was just very convenient. The classroom was there. We have some good topics that we went over, and we got a lot of great feedback from the students. And I believe they're going to have another one this year in June. And if you're interested in getting involved in it, you better make a phone call Monday morning to Rutgers Office of Continuing Education. Yes, Jeff?
What about the observation hive in your living room?
Oh, I've got an observation hive in my living room. And I will tell you, that's a great point. That one's thriving. Probably because it's in my living room. No, I'm just kidding about that. But if you don't have an observation hive in your house, I've learned so much watching this thing that, you know, I should have done it 25 years ago. I got to be honest with you. I bought it. It looks like a piece of furniture. I bought it at one of our auctions at Bob Hughes's house probably 2 or 3 years ago, and it sat in my barn for 3 or 4 years before I decided to drill a hole in the side of my house. And I got to admit, I got a cool wife, and she thinks it's great. Some of you guys might not have a cool wife, and that might be a problem for you. But when she goes away somewhere, drill a hole in the side of your house and throw in an observation hive, because the TV's right here, the observation hive's right there, the window with the bird feeders right there, and my iced tea's right here, and my clicker's right here. So, you know, the commercial breaks, I watch bees all winter long. Very cool. Okay, I'm almost done. 6 winter death loss surveys. We have 6 years of data, and we're going to start it again this year, April 1st. Question, one of the main questions, how many alive in Thanksgiving? How many alive April 1st? We need you to participate. It's done online, either online through the Survey Monkey tool, and you'll get an email about it, or you can fill in the newsletter survey. There's going to be, Angelo has one in one of the newsletters coming up. And we've learned some things from this data, and I'm just going to give you. Here's the data for all 6 years. And I want you to look at these columns. Total death loss, people that said they did nothing to control varroa mites, and this is people that said they did something to control varroa mites, but we didn't even penalize them. Like, suppose they put on Apiguard in November. They said they did something to control varroa. It was Apiguard in November, which is probably not very effective in New Jersey, but we kept them in here. Okay? We kept them in the treated side. So on average, over 6 years, people that do something to work on varroa mites lose on average 23% over the winter. People that do nothing, on average 46% over the winter. And total average winter death loss about 28% for New Jersey. But you can see the highs and lows. I mean, right there, 65%. Why would you risk your investment? That's tremendously high. And actually, when you sort the data, if you did something to control varroa mites and you did it at the right time of the year with something that's effective, you got a much better chance of making it through the winter. Okay, let me speed up. Common mistakes. When I get the limelight, I'm not giving up my mic till I do these. Janet?
I'm going to sit Kevin England.
Let him. Kevin's on my side, Janet. You don't know that, but he's on my side. Okay? People, common mistakes. Don't feed enough in a large enough volume for either a new colony if you're drawing comb, or to stimulate the queen and fatten the colony up for winter. Okay? You know, throw away your quart jars in the front of the hive in November. They're not going to work that well. Okay? People that, common mistake, they don't check for if the colony is queen right. They judge the health of the hive by the flight coming and going out of the entrance. You can't judge that. First nice day, where do you think all the live hives are going to be? They're going to be robbing out the dead ones. And you're going to look at your bee yard and think, hey, everybody made it. Because you're looking at the entrance. Then you're going to call me up a week later and say, everybody made it. They were all alive a week ago, Tim. No, they weren't. Half of them were getting robbed. Okay, you can't judge it unless you look in. Okay? People still continually put their colonies in poor places. They put them in the shade or in a location where they don't get any sun till late in the day. You know what? You want full sun as much as possible in New Jersey. People don't monitor or treat for mites. Very common mistake. You know what? If you don't look for them, you'll never find them. I'll guarantee that. Okay? They also don't check to see if their mite control worked. And this is something that burned me a couple years ago, because I assumed that I put the mite treatment on and I assumed it worked. Okay? And in the spring, what do you think I wanted to blame all my death loss on? Pesticides, okay? But you know what? The more I looked at the bottom boards, the more I looked at the clusters and the signs in the hive, it wasn't pesticides, it was my poor varroa control, because I never checked to see if my treatment worked. This past year, checked, and you know what? In some instances, it didn't work. You put formic acid on a hive with a screen bottom board, you're not going to get good control. You're not going to get good control, but you wouldn't know that unless you check, okay? Feeding too late in fall, some people do that. Feeding liquid syrup in the winter. Get your feeding done at the right time of the year, you'll be much better off. storing empty supers over the cluster under the outer cover, not venting the top during the winter, just like Mr. Swan said. You got to have a vent up there, let that warm, moist air out. Otherwise, you're going to have problems. Okay? You want to help the NJBA? You can read that. I told you it last year. If you need to contact me, here is my contact information. Please give me a call or give me an email. I'm more than happy to talk to you about anything. Okay? If there's any questions, I'll take them briefly. Yes?
Streptomycin is an antibiotic used in orchard treatments. Do you know if it's harmful to bees?
I don't know, and it's not labeled to be put into a hive to control any type of a bacterial issue there. I know that, but I don't know if it's harmful for bees, no. Yes?
I have two questions. One on the pesticides. Can you possibly get something back to the branches that will allow us to look at the hive to see something that can say, well, this may be pesticide cause, some type of
Yes. Carl asked the question if there's something I can get back to branches to educate their people about ways to recognize possible pesticide damage. There is, Carl. If you would send me an email to that effect, I will get it to you, and I'll distribute it to the other branches. What's number two?
The screen bottom board, you mentioned something about some problems with it. How advantageous is the screen bottom board?
I'll tell you what I'm doing. 2/3 of my operation, or my bees, were on screen pallets. Okay? This year they'll all be on solid bottoms. And the reason I say that is because formic acid does not work well with a screen bottom. It's heavier than air, it drops right out the screens. I like using formic acid. It gives you a quick knockdown. And I want to be able to put it in without having to go through a bunch of gyrations to make my colonies hold the fumes. So for my own personal self, that's what I'm going to do, mainly because of mite control opportunities, or you know, both of them, both Apiguard and formic acid, really need the bottom to be solid so the fumes stay in the hive. Okay? And the next question will be, what if we put the little slidey thing in the bottom? Okay, it may work for you, but it's not practical for me. Okay? And it's not practical for me because I don't have a little slidey thing under my pallets. Okay? And I still think you'll get some leakage, but it's better than nothing. Okay? Anything else? At that point, I'm going to turn it back to Janet because she's got the hook, going to pull me off the side.
You can go straight